guys, it's Erin. Today is Book Lovers Day, and I thought that this would be a great opportunity to begin a series that I've been wanting to start for a while and just haven't gotten around to, and that is books that I love, specifically classics that are past favorites. I try to talk about all of the new classics that I read on this channel, but I have been reading classics since I was in middle school, and that has been a while, more than a decade, and so I have a lot of backlist for me. I guess it's all backlist, whatever. So I have a lot of awesome classics that I really love that I just don't have the opportunity to talk about very much. So every once in a while I am going to share 3 or 5 classics that I have read in the past and really love and just want to talk about. Before I get started with my list, I just wanted to say a really quick thank you to everyone who has subscribed in the last couple of weeks. Y'all are awesome. I hit 200 subscribers, which is super exciting. I know it's a small number, but I love seeing my channel grow and meeting all of you awesome people who also love classics or are involved in graduate school or both. So I started with some of my kind of top tier. I don't have like a definitive ranking or like a number 1 or anything, but these are definitely like top 10 books that I really love, that I have been reading and rereading for a long time, and that are important to me in different ways. So I have 5 books here, so I'm gonna talk about these very briefly, which you know, if you've watched any of my videos, is brief. I could make full videos about any of these, and maybe I will someday. But right now, I'll tell you briefly about the plot and then a little bit about why I like them so much and why they matter to me. So I'm going in no particular order, just this book is on the top, so we'll talk about it first. It is the oldest one in this pile, so it kind of works. That is Much Ado About Nothing by William Shakespeare. This book is about a group of soldiers. They have come home from successfully fighting their leader's half-brother, who is bad for some reason, captured him. They're staying at the estate of Leonardo in Messina, and there's just this general festive atmosphere. The new kind of young guy who's made a name for himself in this war is named Claudio, and he almost immediately falls in love with Hero, the daughter of Leonardo. While everyone is waiting for the wedding to happen a week after he proposes, because that's what happens in Shakespeare's plays, they decide to get Benedict, the friend of Claudio and the leader, Prince Pedro, and Beatrice, Hero's cousin, together. Now Benedict and Beatrice have this hate thing going on. This might be the first like famous hate to love story in Western literature. If you know of an earlier one, please tell me. I love it so much. It is a little problematic in Act 4. Hero is accused of something she did not commit, but the men in her life believe the accuser instead of the woman. So just be aware of that. Everything kind of comes out okay, and Shakespeare doesn't side with the men. He sides with Hero. But I still love it. I love hate to love tropes. They're one of my favorites. In addition, this is the first Shakespeare play that I picked up and read on my own. A friend of mine in middle school had read it the year before at her school, and she loved it so much, and she quoted me some of the passages because Beatrice and Benedict have this kind of like back and forth thing. It's a very funny and witty play, and I had to read it. I only sort of understood what was going on a little bit, but subsequent reads made me kind of understand it better and better. I've seen both of the film productions, the major ones, the Kenneth Branagh one and the Joss Whedon one. I really like the Joss Whedon one, actually. It's pretty great. I also saw a performance of this at the Globe Theater a couple of years ago, which was amazing, and as a result of viewing that performance, I actually ended up writing my master's thesis on Much Ado About Nothing. So it has got a near and dear place in my heart. And if you haven't read Shakespeare's comedies, or you haven't read that comedy, I highly recommend it. The next classic is one that I only read last year, but has definitely landed on my all-time favorites. You probably, if you've been around for a minute, you know what I'm going with this. That would be Middlemarch by George Eliot. I'm not even sure entirely why I love this book so much. I read it last summer, and then I happened to take a Victorian literature class last fall that had this on the syllabus. I did not read it again. I read some of it again. Look, it's a long book, okay? And I had just read it like 3 months ago. Still really liked it, and then I ended up writing my final paper on Dorothea Brooke and her character and her character arc. I think it is Dorothea's character arc that I really love about this book, although George Eliot's writing is just fantastic, and this is definitely, I haven't read, she wrote one other novel after this one, but this is definitely like her masterpiece. It's not called Dorothea Brooke because it really is about the town, Middlemarch, the people who live in and around the town. I love how very human everybody is. I remember a couple of times being really annoyed at Eliot because these people that I wanted to just uncomplicatedly dislike, because they were so dislikable, suddenly did really nice things, and I couldn't hate them anymore because they're people. Her descriptions are beautiful, her little moments where she's sort of philosophizing are beautiful and profound, and like I said, I really liked Dorothea's journey. Dorothea starts out, she wants to do something great and dramatic, but what she comes to learn is that doing good in the world doesn't always mean doing something that's going to make you famous, even famous for being good, but instead it's about doing the good that's right in front of you, even if that means that it's personally painful. And I think that's just such a really profound lesson that Dorothea learned, and I really loved seeing her go through that whole journey. Our Mutual Friend by Charles Dickens is next. A lot of this pile is 19th century. This is another book that I read for a class, a 19th century transatlantic literature class to be precise, and this is the first Dickens that I read that I really liked. In high school, I had to read Great Expectations, and I really just, it was not for me. Someday, I will pick it up, and it will be amazing, I'm sure, because it's so many people's kind of top Dickens. But this is not about Great Expectations. This is about Our Mutual Friend. This book taught me to love Dickens novels. It's his last completed novel, and it's kind of a mystery, and I think that's what kind of hooked me and got me interested in reading it. This was a book that I read during an incredibly intense semester, and I did not finish everything that was assigned, and this was one of the books that a lot of my peers didn't finish because it is a chunk. I, however, did finish this because I couldn't not finish it. I was actually assigned to read this again in that same Victorian literature class where we were assigned Middlemarch last fall. I did reread all of this because it had been 5 years, and I loved it just as much. I think it's a combination of the fact that there's this mystery element. We learn the story about John Harmon, who is a miser who kind of alienated his whole family and then left this really crazy will that only left his money to his surviving son if his son married this girl that John Harmon Sr. had met for like 10 minutes one day when she was like 9. Except that just when John Harmon Jr. is supposed to come into his inheritance and his wife, his body is found in the Thames River. And then trying to figure out who killed John Harmon is kind of an undercurrent of the rest of the story, and there's a wonderful plot twist that is just so delightful. I think the characters are really lovely. It's a small-ish cast of characters, small for Dickens in my opinion, and I feel like you really get to know Bella Wilfer, the girl that younger John Harmon was supposed to marry. There's a secretary named John Rokesmith who works for the couple that inherit the Harmon money instead, the Boffinses, who are just the most pure and delightful people ever. Then there's Lizzie Hexam, who, along with her father, the person who found the body of John Harmon, and she gets tangled up into this whole other like side plot that it comes together, and I just really love this whole story. It's really good. It's a little bit kind of like a fairy tale. It really does feel like a mystery and a fairy tale, as opposed to some of Dickens's like harder, more socially critical novels. There's still some of that in there, but it's just a very different creature from a lot of his other works, which I like too now. I do like Dickens, but this, it's the best. It wouldn't be a classics favorites video unless I talked about Jane Austen. Honestly, I could just like put up Jane Austen and count all of her novels because I really love all of them. I have been reading Austen since I was in middle school. Usually every couple of years I get into like a kind of Austen mood and I reread all 6 of her novels. It's kind of handy because There's only 6 of them, so you can do it pretty easily. If I hadn't been so busy, I for sure would have participated in Jane Austen July this year, because I have not read Austen for a while and I'm kind of getting a little bit of a hankering. I might see if I can push it off and participate next year, hopefully. But my favorite Jane Austen is Sense and Sensibility. Well, I'm pretty sure that I was exposed to the plot of Pride and Prejudice first. For some reason, Sense and Sensibility is really the one that captured me. Those two were the ones that I kind of read the earliest and have been with me the longest. I remember really clearly my aunt showing me the Emma Thompson version of the film. I guess I was in middle school, and I had no idea what was going on, and she had to stop after like 2 minutes and explain stuff to me, but I loved it. I just thought it was so wonderful. At some point I sat down and read the book. I don't remember when. I've read it so many times now. But I really identify with Eleanor. I like that she's a heroine who is really admirable but also really quiet. I like Lizzie Bennet a lot, but I don't identify with her at all. Like, we are nothing alike. She's the kind of glamorous golden girl that I wish I could be, but will never be. I'm too much of an introvert. But Eleanor Dashwood, the oldest sister of the 3 sisters that Sense and Sensibility kind of follows, she is quiet, she is sensible, she kind of keeps herself to herself, which isn't actually always good. She tends to be a little judgy. She's not perfect, but there's something about her that I really like. She's artistic, she paints. The story opens when the Dashwood sisters, Eleanor, Marianne, and Margaret, their father dies. They are the daughters of his second wife, and their only brother is a half-brother. He inherits all of the money, and the girls get like a tiny bit of money, and their father makes their brother promise that he's going to take care of them because that's the best he can do. The father, I mean. Stupid laws. Anyway, the brother is married to a real unpleasant woman who convinces him that sending them some game every once in a while is probably enough, and maybe £100 at Christmas. So she moves into their house and basically kicks them out and says, "Good luck, sex for you." And they go and they live in a cottage that is on the estate of their mother's cousin. And this new world opens up a whole new set of experiences. In contrast to Eleanor's very quiet seriousness, the sense and sensibility, Marianne Dashwood is totally infatuated with the romantic movement, and she is just so dramatic. She believes in love at first sight, and she thinks that there could be nothing more romantic than dying for true love, and you can only love once, and all of this dramatic stuff. She is open with her feelings, kind of to a point where she gets a little bit socially censured, but she really doesn't care. Eleanor and Marianne, of course, both fall in love, and neither of those romantic relationships really seem like they're gonna work out. There's a happy ending, of course. What I love about this is it really is about the sisters' relationship. It's about Marianne coming to realize that some of her actions were actually kind of like too much. And it's about Eleanor realizing that she had judged Marianne too harshly and kind of brushed her off in ways that she shouldn't have. And so that's, I think, what I like about the story, at least now as an adult. Not only do I identify with Eleanor, I really like seeing the relationship between the 2 sisters grow and become stronger. The last book on this list today, and I would like to point out how good I am doing on time, I'm very proud of myself, is Gaudy Night by Dorothy Sayers. I read this first in high school. My English teacher recommended Dorothy Sayers novels to me, and I think there were 4 or 5 of them in the library at school, and I read all of those, and then at some point collected and read all of her Lord Peter Wimsey novels. I think they're wonderful. Dorothy Sayers was writing around the same time as Agatha Christie. She was also a mystery writer, but she only wrote like 8 or 9 novels and then a couple of collections of short stories. And then she got kind of sick of writing detective fiction. It was way more popular than she thought, and she wanted to do other stuff, so she quit. I love this whole series. This is another kind of group where I can just like hold up the whole set and be like, all of these, and I'm sure other ones will make their way into other favorites videos, but this one is definitely my most favorite. I actually wrote my undergraduate thesis on Gaudy Night, and I know it very well. I think it's wonderful. This is actually the least like mystery. There is a mystery, and it focuses not on the detective Lord Peter Wimsey, but on Harriet Vane, the girl that he, several novels earlier, helped prove was innocent of killing her former lover. In that book, he fell in love with her, but she was like, no, I'm not going to marry you because I don't need to be in a relationship right now. And he kind of like let her do that, and they became good friends over the course of several novels. So Harriet goes back to her old Oxford college for the like alumni reunion weekend, which is called a Gaudi. Don't ask me why. While she's there, she reconnects with some of her old professors and starts doing a lot of reflecting on where she is in her life now after all of her experiences, both with the murder trial, and she herself is a well-regarded detective novelist. She talks to a bunch of other women who have had different experiences with their university education. Some of them have gone on to do academic things. Some of them have gone on to be wives and mothers. Some of them have found ways to balance academics and motherhood. And so Harriet starts reflecting on all of these things. They also find out that there's a kind of poltergeist or a poison pen. Somebody has been sending threatening letters to various members of the faculty, and Harriet eventually is asked, as it escalates, she's asked to come back to the college and try to low-key figure out what's going on. And then it escalates into vandalism and not quite to violence, but clearly things are heading in that direction. Harriet eventually gets stuck because it's too close to home for her, and calls in Lord Peter, who comes in and helps her solve the mystery. But the story really isn't about the mystery. It's about Harriet thinking through female vocation. This was written in the 1930s. It was rare for women to have a university education just at all, especially not from Oxford. And Sayers uses this novel to think about female academia, female, like I said, female vocation, like what jobs are women supposed to have. And Sayers, in a speech or an essay, talks about how women should have any vocation they want, basically. Like, if a woman wants to be a carpenter, she can be a carpenter. Like, who cares? Which seems really, like, obvious to us right now, but in the 1930s it wasn't. And so I really appreciate the way that she takes the mystery genre and turns it into something sort of socially contemplative. I know that Harriet's thoughts about academia and Sayers's definitely shaped mine and made me more interested in the idea of continuing my own education and going to graduate school and getting a PhD and things like that. I love her portrayals of the college. It just seems so lovely and slightly idealistic, but that's okay. And the first time I went to Oxford, it just was like I goggled because she describes everything so wonderfully. Sayers' father was a choir director at one of the churches in Oxford. She grew up there, and she also was one of the first women to graduate with an Oxford degree, so she knew the city very well. If you've never read Dorothy Sayers' detective fiction, I would recommend, if you're interested in reading Gaudy Night, that you start a little bit earlier and read the Harriet Vane stories, but start actually with Whose Body. This is the first published one, and it is really short. It's a quick read, and it gives you a good introduction to Lord Peter, which you kind of need. Like, you can read Gaudy Night. I'm pretty sure I read Gaudy Night first of all of the stories, but having some backstory from the earlier novels is helpful. Those are 5 great classic novels that I definitely recommend you pick up and read if you haven't already. Some of them are very long. They were all really long. Sorry about that. I'll try to pick shorter ones next time. Maybe I'll just do short classic novels that I love. We'll do that. Anyway, if there are classic novels that you love and you are wondering if I have read or would like to see me talk about if I have, definitely let me know in the comments. And I'd love to hear just some of your really like all-time favorite classics. That is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!